This is Daybreak on this 31st day of January 2023. My name is Samgitu Kono. To introduce the panelists that are here in studio, we have Speaker of the County Assembly of Wajir, Abdile Yusuf. Good morning. And I have Senator of Moronga County, Senator Nyoto. Good morning.
Good morning.
And it's good to see you, both of you here. And of course, we're still expecting the arrival of the governor of Busia, that is one Paul Otoma. As soon as he's able to make his way here, he'll be joining the panel. But let me begin with you, Speaker. I think this is the first time we're having you on Daybreak. Have you?
Yes, the first time.
Okay, so
yes.
Tell me about your county and how you've been settling in as the Speaker of the Assembly and how it is so far.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, Sam. I think we are fairly doing well. Unfortunately, we took guard when we were in the midst of a ravaging drought that is seriously impacting the life of the human beings and animals in Wajir County. We passed our budget a bit late in October. It was supposed to have been passed in June because of some issues. So that gave us a bit of a hurdle in settling in. So we are fairly well into our programs. The government is in place, the executive, the chief officers, the assembly is fully functioning well, with all the committees have been formed.
Okay.
Recently, we also passed about a week ago a supplementary budget to take care of unforeseen emergencies, especially the drought, in terms of providing relief food. There's an outbreak of cholera and anthrax in the area, so we also require medical emergencies.
Okay.
And there is constant breakdown of boreholes as a result of high usage, as a result of the drought. So in order to take care of the need for these extra resources for these emergencies, we had to pass a supplementary budget.
Okay.
So I think there is relief on the way for the people of Wajir as a result of this drought.
And Speaker will be getting deeper into that conversation later on. Senator Nyoto, how has it been? 5 months in?
Thank you, Gituko, for this opportunity. It has been good. We have been settling. Those of us that are new in the Senate have been settling and learning the ropes, and we are doing quite fine, we thank God. And we have actually started working. We have gone for inductions, and one after another committee inductions, inductions for the whole house. In fact, today we also will be having a post-election induction, just like the members of the National Assembly who started theirs earlier. And so I would say we are settling and learning quite fast.
You're not in Mombasa. Why?
Ours, as said it, will begin tomorrow. So today is a day of traveling.
Okay.
So induction, post-election induction for the Senate starts tomorrow morning.
So what is that? What is post-election induction? What are
well, I'm also new to it, but I think they should release the program today. But I think it's just a matter of looking at maybe things, elections, and what happens after election. But I should be in a better position to answer that question maybe once we are done with the induction.
Okay, all right, and we'll give you the opportunity to do that. Again, still waiting for Governor of Busia, Paul Otoma. There are several issues to pursue, especially at a time that devolution is now in its third term, and we'll be talking about that later on. But first, let's focus on something that is in the dailies this morning. Ruto goes after Uhuru is the main story on the front page of the Standard. President Ruto has gone for former President Uhuru Kenyatta's regime officials with claims that some of them are sponsoring Azimio rallies with the purpose of evading taxes. According to the president, the former regime wants to get away with waivers through the back door. And it's a story that you can watch, or you can pursue on page 4 of the Standard. On the front page of the Daily Nation, Ruto, tax evaders sponsoring Raila's poll protest rallies. President Ruto yesterday claimed opposition protest rallies are being financed by people he didn't name, but who he said were keen on evading payment of taxes. Even if they sponsor demonstrations so that they don't pay tax, I want to promise them that they will pay tax. And I think this is a good point to listen to what he said in his own words as he spoke in Mombasa yesterday. Here it is.
Even if they sponsor demonstrations so that they don't pay tax, I want to promise them they will pay tax. There's no more exemption. This country is not the animal farm. We cannot continue to operate in a space where those in power exempt themselves from paying taxes using all manner of instruments, while those who do not have as much power pay tax.
That's the president, and he has been speaking about that for quite some time, including an interview with the media houses on January 4th when he spoke about some banks that were sold to each other and tax was not paid. And Senator Joe Nyoto, when you reflect on this, I mean, what is the president exactly speaking about? Because we've had the former prime minister, that is Raila Odinga, a former presidential candidate in the 2022 election. He has made his allegations. What is the connection between those allegations and sponsorship by people that want to continue evading tax?
Thank you for that question, Gituko. You know, the president receives intelligence reports, I think, on a daily basis. And President William Ruto is a very sober president. And so when he says that, I believe he has intelligence that the same is happening. But to be more specific, and why I believe that what the president is saying is true, if you look at the events of the last few maybe days or weeks, where the president visits Azimio leader's stronghold in Nyanza and is received very well, then out of nowhere, but the Azimio leader comes out and starts saying, of course, after that report that there is a whistleblower who talked about Raila having garnered about 57% of the vote and against Ruto's 41% of the vote, which, of course, in my view, should have been then presented, if it was true, at the Supreme Court. And which from, you know, recent history again of the elections has never happened. You know, we have never had a presidential election where the gap between the winner and the first runners up is anything more than even 3%. We have not seen that. And so out of the blue, and I think that is just something that was sensational, out of the blue, and, you know, after a very good reception of the president in Nyanza, then Raila comes and starts saying, you know, this whistleblower, I mean, the president is illegitimate, his win was not, you know, legitimate and everything. There can only be something else pushing this particular, you know, allegation and this particular trajectory. And so...
And what do you think that is?
I want to believe that, yes, you know, there were very many exemptions, tax exemptions in the past regime, and which I have information KRA wants to pursue. And of course, you know, anytime, because I think if but those exemptions, some of the exemptions, for example, if they were not done legally, then of course that was corruption, and corruption fights back. And so when the president says that, Getuko, I believe, like I started by saying, he has intelligence because it is true that we lost a lot of revenue through tax exemptions. And so there must be a push from somewhere.
Okay, I hear you. Speaker, do you believe that indeed officials of the former regime would sponsor protest against the current regime?
I think this is just joking for political space between the two political powerhouses. Some, I think, the country is going through tough times economically. And the effects of the drought is seriously having an impact on our economy. And therefore, in the minds of Kenyans, what is very important is bread and butter issues. How do you put food on the table for the family? How do you pay school fees for the children? How do you pay rent? And I think what is important is for us as leaders that we need to focus on what is important for the nation. That said, there's also something which is very important, and that is constitutionalism and the rule of law. Because at the crux of this conversation is the elections that we just had. And once we had the 2010 constitution, there were these constitutional conventions that were formed, which were expected to be the fourth arm of the government.
Right.
And the reason, because matters that come under their jurisdiction, for example, land rights, human rights, elections, and all those matters were previously under the office of the president. And there was not much trust Kenyans had in how those matters were exercised. And therefore, as long as we have no trust in these constitutional commissions who are expected to be conducting the affairs of the public in a transparent, fair, equitable manner,
right,
then we will always have a standoff between those people who are competing for political space. And immediately after election, instead of the government and the opposition both focusing on what is good for the nation, we start a new cycle of politicking that is vicious, never ending, and therefore the country gets engaged in things that are not relevant for the wananchi. So if it is true, as the president is saying, that there are people who are trying to evade taxes, and they want to camouflage that using these demonstrations, it is very simple. KRA should go for them.
Okay. And of course, I just wanted to go back to something Senator Nyoto, you said that in the previous elections, you've not had a difference of more than 3%. That is factually incorrect, because Uhuru Kenyatta in 2013 got 50.51%, Raila Odinga got 43.7%. That's close to 7%. In 2017, the election that was nullified, it was 54.17% against 44.94%. Of course, the repeat election was 98% for Uhuru Kenyatta. In 2022, this has been the closest, at 50.49% versus 48.85%. So indeed, there has been a gap of more than 7% previously. And I want us now to listen to what the president said in regards to the bribery claims by one Raila Odinga, saying that Wafula Chebukati had actually visited his home and that he has evidence, photo evidence, and there are certain things they wanted which he didn't disclose. Listen to the president.
Come a president of the Republic of Kenya, don't allow yourself to be distracted by people who are only looking for...
Of course, that's not the president. That is the governor of Kirinyaga, Uhuru. We're looking for the clip where the president is speaking about those bribery claims. As soon as we have that clip, we'll be bringing it to you. But Senator Nyoto, when you listen to, because yes, politicians will do their job, which is to do politics. But when such kind of claims are coming up at such a time and the president is falling for them and even responding, what are Kenyans supposed to do? Because Kenyans are dealing with real issues, which is the cost of living, which is in search for employment. Not politics.
Thank you, Ituko, and thank you for the correction about my whatever assessment of the percentages. I think what I meant was that a 16% difference, according to the claim, is a margin that, of course, we have not had. I did not have the actual percentages, but of course, we have not had about 15–16% difference. But coming to that, and to what the Speaker for Wajir has said, actually KRA is doing its job. And so what the president is doing is maybe making a political response, but does not mean, the Wajir speaker speaks like the president is just lamenting politically without any action being taken. I want to assure him that KRA is doing its job and following up on maybe evaded taxes and collecting the taxes that are due to the treasury. But
just before going from that, I mean, what is the connection between KRA doing its job and politics? Because when the president speaks and when you politicians speak,
yes,
it's as if you're saying that KRA was used for certain political reasons that now you're trying to undo. Isn't it then politics that is using KRA to undo the mistakes of the same system?
You know, Getuko, if you are able to succeed in, in bringing political instability, then of course even government institutions will not work the way they're supposed to work. Because everything, remember that it is politicians that make laws. And everything that, for example, is done, if there is a tax exemption, maybe act that is to be passed, it is going to be taken to Parliament. And the occupants of Parliament are politicians. And so if there is a lot of political turmoil, political instability of a kind, then of course KRA being an institution of government, just like any other government institution, then it will be disrupted in its operations. And you know that in the past, not just in Kenya, that when there is political pressure, then there could be some go-slow. I mean, somebody can force a go-slow in the operations of government structures when they generate a lot of political pressure. And so I think that is what the Azimio leader maybe is looking at, generate a lot of political pressure and see whether people can budge. But the president has promised that his government is not going to budge to this political pressure and that the institutions will continue doing their job the way they are mandated by the Constitution.
Okay. All right. Let's now listen to that clip of the president responding to the claims by Raila Odinga about what some IBC commissioners may have done at his home. Watch.
He is telling this story 5 months after the act. And he is volunteering this information laced with insinuations that the officials had gone there for something he has not disclosed. If it is true, what were these officials doing in your house at your invitation? Being a candidate, how did you end up inviting officials of an independent body to your house?
All right, that is the president, of course, responding to what may have been said or what was said by Raila Odinga. He's questioning why this time. And of course, joining us in studio is the governor of Busia County, that is Paul Otuoma. We'll be listening to him as well on his views about this. But Speaker, when you reflect on what the president is saying, I mean, are we just wasting time? Are we engaging in just politics? How does this help, knowing that the election is how many months ago? 5 months ago, and you have another one in 4.5 months. What should you be doing now?
Well, it will be improper for us to say the president is wasting time. Maybe he has some intelligence or whatever. But I think, as I said earlier, as a nation, we have a lot on our hand. And I think what is important is for the president to focus on the issues at hand. He might be privy to certain information. Mm-hmm. What Raila is saying, whether it is true or not, nobody is able to tell. as I said, constitutional office holders are expected to discharge their mandate with credibility so that the members of the public have trust in them. And regardless of legislation or any kind of pressure from any quarter will not help. What is very important is the credibility and the character of the people who are holding the offices. And there's a lot that is riding on those offices. And the people who are discharging those responsibilities have a huge responsibility on their shoulders. Actually, this nation breaking apart is very much dependent on how they discharge the responsibilities they are holding. Right. And therefore, I think going forward, so that we don't have this vicious cycle, election season after election season, we should be very careful and give the responsibilities to the people who are holding those constitutional offices so that their character and their competence is beyond reproach. So that if you are discharging that responsibility, you know very well that in your conscience, you are doing what is good for the nation, and what you are doing is going to hold the nation together and not break it apart. I think that was very important. Okay, all right. And Governor, good morning and Happy New Year. Good to see you here.
Nice to see you too.
Right. And we've been talking about the latest in the all of politics. We've spoken about the president's remarks about claiming that there are those that evaded tax in the previous regime that are sponsoring the meetings that you've seen of your party leader, Raila Odinga, but also saying that he should have come out clean about the meetings he claims that he had with the IBC chairman and two commissioners way at the Supreme Court. That was in September and August last year. But for you, what should you be focusing on? What is there value in this conversation? And do you think that indeed officials of the former regime are sponsoring meetings of your party leader?
Thank you so much. I think to me, I hold a completely different opinion. There's one trend I have seen in this country that immediately after elections, we again start another cycle of as if we're in another campaign mode for another 5 years. And that's a very expensive exercise for a country like this one, which is grappling with so many problems that we need to sort out. We need to make our institutions stronger and believe in our institutions that once we have carried out a certain activity, there is a period through which we are able to give services to Kenyans and maybe reduce a bit of this campaign mode that we are in for permanently 5 years. A country cannot sustain that kind of behavior for a very long time. And if there are issues, in my view, I always look at it, like especially in the current issue that is going on, there's the legal aspect of the election, and there's the political aspect of the election. The legal aspect of the election, I think, is over, and that's what the Constitution prescribes. We are now, I could call it in the political aspect of it. How you manage that will give you completely different outcomes depending on how you manage it. But in my view, this country cannot afford to permanently be in an election mode throughout. It's a very expensive behavior or culture that we have adopted. If you look at it, this is not the first time it's happening. Even last time, the last 5 years. Right. You remember people went in a campaign mode almost immediately after the election. And you can see what happens. So I think as a nation, we need to be looking at what is weak within our framework of democracy so that we start helping. If we don't, these trends will just continue. And they'll be very expensive for the country. They'll be very wasteful. And we may not be achieving much with it. We can only achieve divisions, lethargy, in fact, dividing people. And you cannot apportion this to just an individual. It's the way we have formulated our institutions and our politics.
So who blinks first? Because first, your party leader says something, the president comes and responds, then it becomes cyclic. Who blinks first? And when does this...
As I have told you, I'm looking at this thing in a different way, and I'm advising. I've said the legal aspect of election is over. if you look at it. We went through a process, it is over. But we are saying there's a postmortem sometimes of what we have gone through. But this is not just a one-off thing of last election. This is something that has been happening in this country. And these are the kind of debates now we need to be saying. How do we strengthen our institutions? What are the weaknesses? What is the best way forward? Because you must realize Kenya will still be there as a country. So it doesn't matter what different opinion different leaders have. But we as Kenyans should be taking stock of some of these comments that we are getting, because it's not my word against yours, because you are no longer an individual. Right. You are representing a constituency, an institution.
And Governor, I hear you, because you know, you won the election in Busia. There was the person who came as the first runner-up.
Yes.
And I don't know how the arrangement works in Busia, but at the national level, you have the person who came in second at the presidential election saying that before you reconstitute IBC, we need to have a national conversation. You have Parliament going ahead to to pass an amendment. It has already been assented into law. The president now has the space to declare vacancies at the IBC and reconstitute the commission through a selection panel. Yeah. So what is that space of those conversations? If indeed there's demand to reform IBC, where do you begin?
You remember before we went to elections, these last elections that have just passed in this last 6 months, you remember we had some debates on some kind of reforms that we needed in our constitution or even in our institution, the way we conduct things. That debate aborted or was postponed. And in my view, this is just what is now being extrapolated, because there were things that were mentioned during that time. And you remember, regardless of the legality of what, there was a lot of opinion and suggestions that were made by Kenyans in terms of what is ailing our institutions. Right. What do we need to do? You remember that became a stillbirth. The courts ruled whatever they ruled, that debate had not been properly formulated. But that did not take away the issues. So if you look properly, these are now the issues that are spilling over. Okay. Yeah, and that's why I said we must separate sometimes the legal aspect of the election and the political aspect. To me, it's a spillover of the debate that was there, that was never concluded. And those are issues, if we don't manage them properly and say, what are these issues Kenyans are talking about? How do we do them? How do we take them on board? And how do we sort them out by making sure that we are either coming up with ways of addressing some of the issues that we are talking about? Like now when you talk about the comments that you have just said, you must remember, these are things a lot of Kenyans get away with. Somebody in an institution would say, so-and-so came and talked to me, and he told me ABCD, and yet, when you are taking an oath of that office, you remember what oath you are taking. And it said you'll be truthful to that office, you'll do this. So by the time you're also making those kind of comments, that, you know, somebody in private came and saw me and said this, without a due process that there is chapter 6 of the Constitution and you're going to be held to account, then again you see these are the same things Kenyans were saying. What are our national ethos when we were debating? Okay. What is this? What is this that is ailing us? Sometimes we come up with very good constitutional suggestions, but in terms of implementation, are we able to implement? Okay. Are we able to walk the talk? All right. That has been the debate.
I hear you, Governor. And we're taking a short break here. When we come back, we'll be reflecting on what has been happening in the counties. Of course, with the Governor of Busia here, the Speaker of Wajir here, and the Senator of Boronga County. Stay tuned.